All right. And so fun. It's fun to see all the people from around the world here to interact with us. So that's what I love about the Agile community is, we transcend borders, transcend even the United States. So I want to do a quick introduction for Chris in the session. About artificial intelligence. It's your friend, not a threat. So Chris, as you may know him, he's the virtual agile coach. He's on a mission to help people continuously improve each and every day and have fun while they do it. That's one thing I've loved following Chris over the years. He's got over a decade of experience creating high performance teams across a range of industries, from smaller lean enterprises to some of the world's largest companies. He's dedicated to creating environments where people can be their best selves on their day and support even them on their worst. Managing partner at Virtually Agile, which is a challenger consultancy, is regular on the conference circuit, podcaster, blogger, and yes, soon to be author. Released the first chapter of his book very recently. Very excited about. Always seeking new ways to share his expertise, inspire others to think creatively about how they can continuously improve. So it's our pleasure at Virtually Agile to welcome the Virtually Agile coach, Chris Stone.
Hello there, folks, and thank you for joining me today. As Fred, I love these reactions. Yeah, just bring them on, keep them coming. As Fred kindly shared, I'm here to talk to you about AI and how you can use it to improve and enhance the way you do Agile today. And just as a side note, someone did clarify once, or did query once, when you say AI, do you mean artificial insemination? No, I absolutely do not mean that. That's not why you're here today. And I don't mean Adobe Illustrator either. It's artificial intelligence. Just getting that out of the way. Fundamentally, I believe that AI is your friend and not your threat. I know it's bursted onto the scene, in particular with ChatGPT and OpenAI coming out in the past year or so, and now pretty much every company is doing something with it. And I'm here to share with you a few of the ways that I in particular use it to help the way I do my work. Fred has kindly mentioned, and I don't tend to like to talk too much about myself, but you can see on the Miro board here, hopefully you can see that. This is me, speaker, trainer, podcaster, creator, writer, disruptor. And my fundamental beliefs are that the key to agility is continuous improvement. And we spend so much of our waking lives working, we owe it to ourselves to have a bit of fun while we do so. Anyway, what I'd like to start with is a bit of an icebreaker. On this Miro board, what I'd like you to do is grab one of these yellow post-it notes, write your name and your role inside it, and then move it over to here somewhere on the right-hand side. Okay? And then, once you've got your name written here, I'd like you to draw some lines between your post-its with your name and someone else's. A green line will indicate something you've learned from that person. A blue line will indicate that you've perhaps collaborated with someone in that capacity or in some capacity. And a red line might be someone you want to network with in the future. So perhaps someone you want to work with in some capacity in the future. To access the pen functionality in Miro, just press P on your keyboard. You can also change the colors by doing so as well. There's a navigation panel on the left-hand side of Miro as well. You can also use that. Andy, to use the Miro board, it should be embedded inside Butter. If for any reason you cannot access the Miro board through Butter, I will share a link to that board in the chat now. So I'm seeing names appearing. We've got Julie. Julie is a future talker at this meetup. We've got Caitlin Summers. And names are appearing.
Got to draw two lines, Chris, because I feel learned something from you, and we've collaborated.
We have indeed. Yes, apologies. Within Butter, this board you're seeing on the screen is embedded inside. You can interact with that, so feel free to do so. Eddie, you'll just have to tell me, and I will make a mark for you in some capacity. I know you're on your phone.
I will say, trying this pen thing, I've never felt so bad at Miro. I thought I knew. I've never used a pen in Miro. Just remember for Artur, he taught me if you make a whoopsie, you can do Command Z on your keyboard and just undoes it for you.
Look at all those lines. Now, what I love about this icebreaker is it just shows you the power of the community. There are so many people you learn from. There are so many opportunities you have to work with others. And interestingly, this icebreaker was a AI creation. I was just browsing around through AI one day and had an idea, and I decided to ask it to create me an icebreaker. And this was one it suggested, and I've searched. I cannot find the origin of this icebreaker anywhere. So I was actually impressed by the creativity of AI. Now, let's move away a little bit. What I'd like to learn from you is where you currently sit in the debates. You should be here on the board now. Is AI a friend to you? Is it something that you see as a threat, or are you on the fence? You can share your perspective by dragging one of these little post-it dudes onto the selection there. Eddie's in the friend category. Here we go. A few people on the fence. All right, no one's seeing it as a threat yet. This is good. All right, so next question. How frequently do you use it? Are you on the scale of never on the left-hand side? Daily, a few times a week, just once? What's your personal experience been?
Interesting scale, going from never to daily to a few times to just once.
I was just feeling a mixed up scale.
I'm a daily.
Pretty much daily for me. All right, and let's go a bit further then. So your thoughts on AI in a few words. Put inside these post-it notes where you sit. What are your thoughts on AI? Unclear on how best to use it? Well, hopefully this session today will give you some inspiration. Helpful when used the right way, a time saver, interesting, only as good as the inputter. It's very true. It's one of those kind of rubbish data in, rubbish data out sort of situations, a bit like Jira sometimes. It can revolutionize things. It serves a purpose. It's an enabler. It can increase your productivity. It's a bit like Wikipedia. Just imagine when you are using Google today, you're searching for the answer for a question and you put in a prompt into Google and a ton of web pages come out, and then you have to scroll through and try and find which one you think is the best answer. And then you get to that web page, and then the creator of that blog post or whatever it is tells you a life story about how they came to be here. And you scroll through that web page and eventually you find the bit of information you're looking for. And that could take a long time. Interestingly, with the use of AI in particular, you can find the answer to those questions a lot easier. I actually often don't use Google these days to find the answer. I often type the prompt into Google and put Reddit at the end, and someone on Reddit will have that answer much quicker than actually Google will. And AI can enhance that further or speed that up even further. A way I often describe ChatGPT in particular is it's a bit like a calculator is for words, in the same way that back when I was a kid, I was told repeatedly by teachers, you won't have one of these in your pocket one day, and therefore you have to learn all these calculations and these formulas. Well, that was an absolute fucking lie, because I've got a phone in my pocket and it works just the way I calculated it. And the internet does the same. And for people that struggle with turning words into powerful statements and things like that, and storytelling, you can use OpenAI in particular to help with that. Another way I describe it is it's like having 1,000 little interns that can go away and do a ton of research on my behalf and help me out, so it can drastically speed up the time it takes me to do something. Now, here's a few questions for you. What do you think the community is saying about AI on their percentage of, what percentage of people are using AI on a daily basis? What does the community say there? And don't move that image because that will tell you the answer. What do you guess? Either speak aloud or type in the chat. Or even add a post-it note on top, whatever you're feeling. A guess of 18%, 20% from Kaylin, 30%, 15%. All right. So it's roughly 18%. So David nailed it. What a guess. Good effort. 18% are using it daily, occasionally 51%. 28% have never used it, and other 2%. And what are people actually saying about it? So Kylie uses it to make poems about jack and potatoes. That's the best use case I've ever heard for ChatGPT. Fred himself uses it to rewrite things. So if you're trying to get to a core sentiment of something, maybe write an email, it can help you rewrite something in either more formal or less formal approach, or revise it and improve it. I know of people that struggle with dyslexia and things like that who use it to craft emails and otherwise. There are people using it for high-level market research, using it as instead of Google as Wikipedia. People are using it to critique parts of their workflows, to make things better, to create OKRs, to create training outlines, user stories, meeting agendas. People are using it to enhance their vocabulary, to learn topics, summarize long articles. If you find an article that's pretty long, or even a PDF, you can chuck that inside ChatGPT and say, summarize this, or give it a 3-bullet summary, or a TLDR if you're a Reddit user, too long, didn't read, and it will summarize it for you and make it much more easy to consume. Gemma used it to write a Scrum team motivational song. Fantastic. It's actually a better poet than I. You ask ChatGPT to write a poem, it can create a poem much better than most people in 10 seconds. So it's fascinating the number of use cases you can discover with it. I always offer people the opportunity to choose their adventure a little bit whenever I do a session like this. And I'm keen to hear from you. Where would you like to learn more use cases about? Product ownership or management, agile coaching and Scrum mastery, or just learning? Use these little stars to share with me which one you're keen to learn about. And we'll go in that direction first. For awareness, by the way, I've got a Notion template, or a list, a tabled list of lots of prompts that you can use that I will share at the end of the session as well. Ones that you can just copy and paste immediately and try today. Eric, good one. Summarizing books, a 100-word summary about a particular chapter, or pull out top 5 quotes. Composing a cover letter in Shakespearean English. Yeah, brilliant. I've had it rewrite the retrospective prime directive in whatever theme retro I was doing that day. So if it's a piratey retro, you can turn the retro prime directive into something piratey. You can use it to, you know how cover letters are an absolute waste of everyone's time. Well, you can get it to create a cover letter for you based on the job description in seconds or so. Because do you know what? Every company out there is using, algorithms and machine learning and that sort of thing to filter out your CVs. You may as well play their game back and use it to create cover letters if they're going to insist you arbitrarily create one. Right, so the winner is Agile coaching and Scrum mastery. So let's start in that direction first. Let's get inspired. I'm going to share with you a number of ways that I have used ChatGPT, a few key examples. So let's imagine you have a dysfunction. You're working with a team, and what you want to do is create some experiments, or identify some experiments that might help address that particular problem. Let's assume the dysfunction is a lack of psychological safety. Using the following prompts, create a 6-week plan, including a list of experiments that could be tried by a Scrum Master to address a problem in their team with a lack of psychological safety, explaining each one clearly, how it could be introduced and the outcomes behind it, and any things to look out for. 1 experiment per week, and place them in a table format. And what you're seeing here is exactly the response it gives: a tabular list of experiments you can try, each aiming to begin incrementally addressing a problem with psychological safety. You could use it to create OKRs in industries that you perhaps aren't familiar with, or if you're just using it to try and get a bit of inspiration. So ask it for OKRs on the topic of improving customer retention, and it'll give you examples. Again, you can see the exact outputs here on this Miro board. Let's say you want to mix up things by creating a new retrospective. What's fascinating is I'm a big believer in creating retrospectives. You've probably seen some of mine out there. When I used to create a retrospective, I used to sit there for probably about half an hour to an hour just thinking, right, what do I know about the topic? I might Google and look for some great quotes. I might rewatch the TV show, whatever it may be. I might listen to the music for inspiration, and the prompts would come over time. Whereas now, if I need to, I could create several new retros in that same time frame just by asking ChatGPT. I could put in a query like, you are an amazing Scrum Master who uses thought-provoking questions to help their team generate insights. Suggest 10 questions using quotes from Shakespeare. So a bit like Philip did, using Shakespeare as a theme. And there it goes. It suggests a number of Shakespearean quotes from real plays that you could use to query your team and help them discover ways they can improve. And again, what I would really emphasize here is that the responses you get are just as good as what you put in. So if you learn to query ChatGPT in the right way, the responses are really impressive. Now, what I would really recommend you do is always, sanity check what you get out from it. Don't just immediately put it out there. Just have a little read through, make sure it makes sense. It's not going to be perfect, but it's pretty damn close, and it is a massive time saver. So have that in mind. What about workshop creation? Let's say you wanted to create a workshop. Again, you've got a problem with technical debt with your team. You could ask it to create a workshop for you addressing that problem. You give it the time frame, perhaps some of the target audience, and you might even ask it to use the 4Cs model from training at the back of the room, and it will give you a structure indicating at which points the 4Cs are being applied, including icebreakers, including the concepts, the concrete practice, and otherwise. So you can get it to help you with creating workshops to begin with. You can then I use modifiers. So once you've put your first prompt in there, you might add a modifier like let's revise this workshop. Let's make it virtual only, or let's make it focus on its being in person, or let's ensure we look at it through a lens of neurodiversity and make sure it's applicable to a range of people, because that's something that I haven't had a lot of experience with in the past. And you can get it to sanity check and suggest improvements and tweaks you can make. So again, there are lots of ways you can modify your initial query and adjust it to improve the response you get back, because sometimes the response isn't perfect and you might want to add a modifier, a slight tweak. Let's look at it from this lens, or let's make it shorter, or let's adjust this point. You might not be happy with the connections part of the 4Cs, and you might want to adjust that and say, like, give me 3 more variations of that, and it will do so. You then have things like, let's say you're working with a team that's struggling with the actions that they come up with out of retrospectives, and you've probably faced this yourselves. You've got a retro, someone suggests an action, and it's something like, let's just talk more. Let's communicate more. And you're like, well, that's super vague. That's not very helpful. Like, it's not specific. You can't really measure that. So one query I recommend you try is asking it to use the logic from Atomic Habits. So the book James Clear, book by James Clear, Atomic Habits. And you can ask ChatGPT to use that specific logic where you make things easier, more obvious, more attractive, more satisfying, or if they're habits you're trying to remove, make them invisible, unattractive, unsatisfying, or more difficult. And you could ask it to give you, and again, in this tabular format, a list of ways that you could make a retroaction better by asking that prompt, and it does it. And then you just take the ones consider the experiments, give it a go, or you empower the team to choose which of these do we think we should give it a go. So there's lots of ways there that you can try to improve things just from an agile coaching perspective. Again, I've got a list of these in Notion that you can just copy and paste, and I'll share this with you at the end of the session. Any thoughts, builds, queries from anyone before we move on to the next area?
Yeah, just build upon like one thing I do, like I have ongoing conversations. And so it understands the context of something. And so I can easily add it a follow-up. Like, I wrote there, I have an ongoing one about retros. Like I've coached it around how to write a retro in a way. Like first was like for Sonic the Hedgehog. And I'm like, okay, using the same thing, give me a Halo retro. And it spit out something great that I was able to make into a mirror board.
And there's what you've reminded me of is a really good querying technique. If you give it a specific example of something you're looking for, that can really help it. So if you're saying, right, I'm looking for retrospective actions that look a bit like this, give a few examples of good ones that you've already got, and then ask it for more of those. It will remember that and use that as an example. So that can be quite powerful also. To build on what I was saying about OKR creation, you could also do this for user stories. Let's say you're working in a new industry, you've never worked with it before, and you're introducing the concept of user stories to teams, and you want to make them really specific to their industry. So maybe it's video gaming and you've never worked in video games before. You can ask ChatGPT to give you some real examples from video games, and it will create them. And that can be a great way to make it actually specific to them rather than the generic ones you often see. When I'm training, a lot of times you use something generic like maybe Deliveroo or a food delivery app that many people are familiar with, because you want people to be, it's got to apply to their context, but you can make it even more so with the help of ChatGPT. I can see others are using it to write short collaborative stories for retrospectives. That's a cool use case here. Nicely done. A sports theme retro, good stuff. Describing a challenging situation, and creating and getting ChatGPT to create a detailed plan how to address it. You could use there's a concept called a rubber duck. Having a rubber duck is just someone to bounce ideas off. So let's say you haven't got a fellow Scrum Master or Agile coach in your company just to chat with, or they're particularly busy at the time. You can ask ChatGPT to behave like a peer of yours and just say, right, I've got this idea. How could it be improved? Or what else could I consider? And that can be really useful as well. There is Brad's asking a question. So there are various versions of ChatGPT, 3.5 and 4.0. 3.5 is or was trained on a lower volume of data, and therefore the results aren't as accurate or reliable as 4.0. 4.0 is or was until recently, I believe, restricted to just premium subscribers of ChatGPT. But Fred, I think you were saying that's now changed, right? So I think they've just released 4.0 to the wider public. There are differences, and in the past I have dabbled with experimenting, right? What does 3.5 give you versus 4.0? And you do tend to get better results with 4.0, but I don't believe that's a problem going forwards, given that everyone should have access to it.
Out of curiosity, have you done any comparison between Bard and ChatGPT?
I haven't, no. I've just anecdotally heard that Bard isn't as good, but I've not experimented with using it myself. Have you?
Yeah, I have, and it's not as good. Not as good. Though they expect that the next release might surpass 4.0.
Definitely something to experiment with. These things are going to evolve so rapidly now that people or companies are investing so much time, energy, and money into it. So it's good to stay abreast of the latest developments and keep trying things. And this is why I love this topic. It fascinates me because of how powerful these things become. I can foresee a situation probably not too far away where you are in a Zoom or a Teams meeting, and the transcript is automatically recorded from voice recognition, and AI will then automatically turn that transcript into a summarized list of the actions mentioned, so that your meeting notes are just captured and sent around automatically without anyone having to record minutes. That won't be far away.
That can be done now. It's with OpenAI has Whisper AI, which I actually use. It's amazing. It's live with perfect grammar, by the way. voice to text recording, and I think it has over 100 languages. I don't want it only does automatic translation into English, but it's a automatic live translation as well.
Perfect. I know Butter, for example, they have built in this recap functionality. So at the end of every recorded session, it will recap with GIFs, with transcripts, with kind of meeting summaries and things like that. This is not going to be far away from happening, regularly with most video conferencing platforms these days. So the idea of having to record and capture minutes these days is going to disappear.
Christopher,
Yes.
quick question. I'm curious about your own frustration, how you've dealt with it. I came across trying to investigate manned submersibles, acoustic noise, and I gave up on that one. But I kept it simpler. I was trying to populate a vending machine with no engineered foods, no frozen. Basically, this is the criteria: no frozen, few preservatives, more on the healthy side. I said, give me 3 options of 30 items each, and it would provide those lists. But then it would throw frozen foods in, even though I specified no frozen foods and no preservatives. And so I'm testing it because I know the products, and I said, oh. Is this not a frozen? And it would apologize and say, then it would generate it again, but then it would still leave the frozen objects, the frozen products in the list below. So then I would cut and paste. Is this not a frozen item? Oh, I apologize. So I'm curious. Is it my prompting, or is it and that, again, that's using the free version versus the 4.0 and beyond. What's been your experience?
So I've experienced a similar thing like that, where you've asked or you've given a specific limiting variable, and it still gives you that response. Obviously, it's being trained very regularly. I believe when you get a response, you get the ability to upvote and downvote it. You get the ability to add a comment or some details saying why it wasn't correct. Sometimes, even though you then say this is not what I was looking for, yes, it will apologize, and then it will do the same again. And this is why I'm saying that you can't just take the output and assume it's perfect and just copy and paste it somewhere and expect it to be that way. You've still got to apply your own learning, your own knowledge and expertise behind it. There are, I guess, some ethical challenges that come in with this use. It will and probably can be used to feign expertise. So there are some things, I guess, to watch out for. But there are so many ways that I believe this can amplify productivity, and that it can be a benefit to society if used correctly.
Absolutely. Good answer. Thanks, Christopher.
No problem. So let's have a quick look at some product use cases then. I think we've touched upon a few of these. So you can use it to create user stories. Suggest 10 user stories for a food delivery app that helps customers find food that meet their specific dietary requirements, for example, vegan or gluten-free. And again, it will create 10 examples. You then might use a further modifier on this and say, make them even more granular. So you might want to split them further, turn this into 5 additional smaller user stories. And then it will do that further. So that can be quite useful for teams that are struggling to make user stories more granular, more easily fit inside a sprint, if that's how that team are working. You might have a situation where all you've gained from a user or a customer is just a one-liner, we want X, and you can use that to turn it into a user story voiced format, if that's, again, what you're using. Another great one I have discovered is turning existing user stories into a behavioral-driven development language. So that can be automatically converted into your testing languages, your Cucumber, your Gherkin, and otherwise. So again, that can be quite useful, just removing some of the admin from the situation. You could use it to create a business model canvas. So what I've put in here is I've asked it for a business canvas model on a food delivery product. Again, this is the same user stories, the use case, vegan and gluten-free. And what it's done is it's specified the activities, the resources you'll need, the value proposition, the key metrics. So the fields that would have been inside a business model canvas. And you can try this with other well-known canvases as well. Again, worth mentioning another qualifier on ChatGPT in particular, the data it's been trained on is pre-2021, so it won't have the latest stuff beyond 2021. They are evolving this, and the next version will likely have data beyond 2021. They've also released plugins. Again, this is, I believe, something that's beta to certain accounts currently. And I know you have to apply for this, but there are certain plugins that enable it to use live web data, to integrate with other platforms like Zapier, Wolfram if you're in the legal domain. So they are building in these capabilities that makes it go beyond 2021 data also.
Code interpreter as well.
Sorry?
Code interpreter as well.
Yeah.
So code interpreter with OpenAI is unofficially now called OpenAI 4.5.
There we go. So use cases from a development perspective. Now, let's have a quick few looks at the ways you can use it to learn. So let's say you are looking to summarize large volumes of data. I alluded to this one earlier. You might want to summarize an article into something shorter. You're just trying to learn the key salient points about it, and you can ask it to do so in 5 bullet points. You might be looking to go deeper into a particular topic, or you might want to help your class or a group of people you're mentoring develop by a specific area of focus, such as again, facilitation, and you could ask it to create a list of books that might be relevant to those people. So it will give you that list. And again, I've looked at these recommendations, and they're pretty good ones. You can help you plan your own learning journey. So you might ask for a 6-week plan to develop again in a particular topic. You might want to up your facilitation game when it comes to retrospectives, and it will help you create a 6-week plan, starting with the basics, practicing your facilitation, improving your questioning skills, and otherwise. And you might be looking to learn about a particular topic. You might have heard about this topic in a meeting. You might have discovered it in some training, and you want to go a bit deeper. You can ask it to teach you. So you can say, right, you'll act as my aid to learning, provide a clear and concise description of what psychological safety is and why it's important for high-performing teams. Reference any articles or publications with data, and it will go into that. It will tell you about the Aristotle project from Google, for example. It will allude to the works of Amy Edmondson, who is who's a professor who has released works on that exact topic and who's known for coining the term psychological safety. So if you're looking to learn, you can use ChatGPT to do so as well. Now, frustratingly, what I was going to do is get you folks to practice in live, creating your own use cases, just jumping onto ChatGPT and having a go with what you can come up with, trying to solve some real use cases of your own. Alas, it's being a victim of its own success today, because it's I can't even access it myself. They are throttling the access because the demand is too high right now. Possibly, Fred, because version 4.0 has come out, and lots of people are going, I want to try 4.0 and see how it compares to 3.5. So unfortunately, the live demonstration part of the session can't happen. The demonstration gods are not with me today. What I will show you, however, is a few ways that Miro has included AI into its tool. So if you are a facilitator and you're using Miro, and I do believe other virtual facilitation tools, I think Mural is coming up with their own as well, you might learn some things that you can do in that capacity. Mike, you have a question?
I've just tried OpenAI now. ChatGPT is online and certainly working for me. If you want to try it for yourself.
Let's give it a go. See what happens. Within 10 minutes of me starting the session, it was saying it was down. So let's see what happens. Oh, I'm in. Yeah, I'm in. So if we do want to try that, if anyone has an account, we can do that. But what I'll do quickly first is just show you a couple of ways Miro can do it. So what I'll do is drag your attention to here on the board. Imagine you are in a retrospective or a workshop. You can see on the board here, this is the Dan Pink Drive retrospective using the autonomy, mastery, and purpose as prompts. What I'd like you to do is just think about some things on the left-hand side here in the autonomy column that maybe have lessened your own sense of autonomy in the workplace, and just add them on those Post-it notes. So just that left-hand column, take a moment to do that, and then I will use that data to show you how Miro is helping you with AI. So type inside those Post-it notes and we'll see what happens. The things that have lessened your sense of autonomy in the workplace. So micromanaging, a lack of information, more micromanaging, having a commanding team lead, a lack of transparency, the big boss asking for a steering group, a lack of information, poor communication. Yeah, some real common ones. Keep them coming in for another 30 seconds or so, and then we'll use some AI witchcraft.
So interestingly enough, if you plug that into Bard as a question, it not only gives you what inhibits or what lessens autonomy, but it gives you ways of tackling that as well.
Very nice.
One
So
thing
this
I
is-
like about ChatGPT versus Bard, I'll say from a user interface, I love how you watch ChatGPT write the information out, and Bard just like is magically appears with this thing it pulled from a book.
Yeah, it somehow feels more conversational that way, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Feels more natural. Feels like it's actually doing some thinking rather than just churning a response back at you. But that's another good use case for it. So imagine you're using this exact retrospective with a team. You've identified some ways that autonomy is lessened. You then might put that query into AI and say, how could we address this problem with our autonomy being lessened? And it'll give you some options to try. And this is the beauty of it. It's giving you options. You don't have to choose all of them. You can empower the team, say, which of these do we think we could try? Which of these would help us? What do we want to do with this information? All right, so we've got some responses here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste these to the right, and then I'll show you some ways you can use AI. So we're over here now. What's happening on my screen is when I highlight all of these Post-it notes and press a blue button, it says Miro AI. It's like a blue sparkly button. I've got three options that appear. One is summarize. So I'm going to press the summarize button, and it's happening now. What it's done is it's created a new Post-it note. I'll make it nice and large so you can see it. It's saying leadership lacks transparency, resists change, micromanages, and communicates poorly. Territorial managers hinder progress in the agile environment. So if you've got a team that you've just done a retrospective with and you want to have a quick summary of it, in seconds it's created that little summary for you. You can say, right, well, this is the summary, this is the output of that question. Can be quite useful to visualize that. Just en masse very quickly. Another option, if I highlight them all again, the second option I'm going to choose this time is cluster by keywords. And you can see what's happened there. So it's now given some hashtags to these. We've got micromanagement, because there was 3 of those. We've got steering and team management. We've got dates. We've got communication. And we've got resistance to change and one that was uncategorized. So this has basically done a clustering by keyword, a bit of affinity mapping in seconds. And again, it can be a very useful way of sorting large volumes of data, especially when you've got lots and lots of people involved. So I have used this in town halls with hundreds of people. I've used this in scaled retrospective, again, with hundreds of people, all contributing their own perspective as to what's happening in the company, and auto clustering. And again, this is a great way to sense make and decide what you'll do next. If I press Control Z and undo that, we'll go back to what our example was, or our prompts were, our responses were. I've got a third option, which is cluster by sentiment. So this is going to be used a bit of sentiment analysis. And you can see most of these are neutral. That makes sense because it was something about lessening. The prompt was about lessening. So we're expecting neutral responses. Sorry, expecting negative, not responses, not positive ones. But this could be quite useful as well. It feels a bit big brotherish performing sentiment analysis. But again, if you frame this in the right context, hey, this is just one way of looking at the data. What does this tell us? And it's not to be used to punish or otherwise. It can be a useful way of deciding what you'll do next. So a couple of ways you can use AI built inside Miro to decide how you'll proceed with the volumes of information you're collecting when you're facilitating. Any questions on any of those?
We had some questions in the chat about how you get access to it. I know, like, I had requested beta access a while ago, and it just now is there for me. And I think when you're showing Chris, it's not showing the blue button from this.
What I'll do is I will share my screen as well, so you can see exactly what's happening when I do this, if that's helpful.
Probably. Thank you, sir.
Should be on its way to you now.
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. So we've got our original list here. When I highlight these, what happens is along my little my little toolbar that appears, this one here, the blue button says Miro AI. If I press it once, I get a further drop down with summarize, cluster by keywords, and cluster by sentiments. Pressing each of these options will cause it to do that. And you can learn more about Miro AI. I'll share that link in the chat as well, so you can learn more about it.
I've just put a link in there.
Perfect.
Thank you, Mike.
Cheers, Mike. Very easy to do. Once you've got access to it, boom. In seconds, you can summarize large volumes of data. Now, what I'd like to do is get you practicing a little bit. So if you do have a a ChatGPT account, jump on there. This blows my mind all the time, by the way. Not only ChatGPT, but what companies are doing with it. What I'd like to do is get you folks practicing. And the way we can do so is if you jump onto here, I'll bring your attention to here. If you click that button, click me, it will take you to OpenAI. If you've got an account, if you haven't got an account, you can create one, it's free. And what we're going to do is we're just going to crowdsource some new use cases. Just think of maybe problems you're trying to solve in your ways of working today. They don't have to be Agile related. If not, just think of things that you might want to try and solve, and use some of the ideas you've seen from what I've shown you to inspire you. And down here, we've got space for you to share back what you discover. So jump onto one of these and start adding your thoughts. If you find a particularly cool one, you might want to share it in the chat so that others can benefit from it also. This board, by the way, will remain available for you to access. So if you see something that sounds pretty cool and you want to reuse that prompt, then feel free to do so. The prompts, or the area where you can do this, by the way, is down here. So there's lots of these little spaces where you can put in what you've tried, what the use cases, or why you want to do it, and the exact. If you can copy and paste like a picture of the response you get out, that will be useful as well. So we'll do like a group hackathon discovering AI use cases and get you practicing prompting. Obviously, feel free to ask questions if you're struggling to think of a prompt. I can do some live as we go on as well and show you how I do so. In fact, what I'll do first is I'll copy and paste a good example of a prompt that I use. And you can use that. So going into the chat now is the prompts that I've used to write improved retrospective actions using atomic habits thinking. It's one prompt. And then here's another one on designing workshops as inspiration as well, going into the chat, the exact prompt. You can copy and paste that and change it. You can tweak it. It's really useful to start with telling ChatGPT who you are. You are an expert in X topic and what you're trying to achieve. And then even giving examples of what you're trying to achieve is really helpful as well. I can see Matthew has shared some good examples. Create OKRs for my Agile delivery chapter, implementing scaled Agile. So we've got examples of increasing Agile maturity, cross-meeting synchronization, regular retrospectives. Nice. We've got act as an expert Agile coach. How would you plan your first few days in a new post with a team new to Agile? Nice. So starting with a new team, where might you start? Just using it to bounce ideas off of ChatGPT can be quite useful. Fred's working on helping a client who is new to leadership.
Yeah, they asked me about being creative. I wish I had considered going to ChatGPT instead of trying to just riff it off. Not riff it. come up with things off the fly to give them a program.
Outcome focus in a daily scrum. That's a cool one. Because we know daily scrums or daily stand-ups have become quite, or can become quite mechanical and repetitive, and just focus on, hey, what did we do yesterday and what are we going to do today? And that doesn't really focus on outcomes. So there's lots of ways you can refresh a scrum. Yeah, there's a prompt here. Do you understand? So when you first kick off a prompt, asking them, do you understand, and giving an example can be useful. Thanks for that, Philip. Someone's been struggling with sprint retrospectives, and they've actually plugged it into a website, RetroMap, and suggest a plan and a template that would fit their specific situation. That's quite cool. I was on a podcast recently with a fellow AI enthusiast, and we on the fly created a cheese themed retrospective, which I had so much fun doing this. I was laughing my head off as I was doing so, because it started talking about using kind of different cheeses that you'd pair with others, and it made me laugh so much. I enjoyed it. It's just good for injecting a bit of fun. Let's say it's been a tough sprint for the team and you want to bring a bit of fun to it. That can be good too.
Seems like a good example.
A gooder example, absolutely. Guess you could go with like, what was gooder about the last sprint? Where can you not bear it? Or where can I bear it? Or something like that. I'm sure there's better cheese puns than that. I'll give it a go. See if I can create another cheese one. I create a retro prompt. I'll dig that out.
I asked this. I'm just laughing at some of these puns. Cheddar off next time. Improvements.
Cheddar off next time. Have we been good enough in our recent sprints, or is there Rumano for improvement? Are we being provolone in our approach to problem solving, or should we invite more collaboration? Are we still on track with our sprint commitments? Love a cheese pun. A fishing story, a retrospective to a team who all like to fish. That's a niche team. A team who all like to fish. Amazing. Every team has a microculture, and you can create experiences for them, even if you don't know much about their particular microculture, using OpenAI. Any other cool ones people have discovered? The outcome of focusing on open and honest collaboration. Some thought-provoking questions to improve team collaboration. I can definitely see how they could be used in a retrospective. Striking a good balance between individual accountability and collective responsibility. Nicely done. What we'll do, we'll give it a couple of more minutes, and then we will finish this portion. We're giving you some time to practice, and we'll just reflect on what we've learned. Has anyone discovered any cool ones they'd like to share with everyone? Anyone they'd like to highlight?
Just as a contrast, I'm not sure whether you're interested. I took your first prompt, Chris, put it into Bard just to see what Bard would do with it. So I've pasted that into the bottom right, but one.
Okay, and this is the lighter color one, right?
Sheesh.
Yeah.
Scrolled away now.
Mm. So it's put it in the table format as well.
This is a reminder. Write your book.
Thank you, Alexa. I always forget my 7 p.m. Alexa reminder.
But I think you've just shown us a new use of AI.
Well, there we go. So what you might do is you might use atomic habits logic to define ways that you could make things more easy for you, or create reminders for you and things like that. And yeah, you could do what I've just done and have Alexa telling you to do things periodically. Doesn't have to be just work related.
I mean, I've had it give me recipes. Like, I have these ingredients in my pantry and I want to make something suggested, which was great. Not work related.
Honestly, I think the only limit to what you can probably achieve with it is your own creativity. Just keep experimenting, keep giving things a go. Combine. What I want to do more of is combine completely unrelated industries and just see if I can create some new approaches to doing things. So like take something from Agile and combine it with something from, I don't know, bioengineering or something like that, and just see what comes out and see if it can get me thinking new different models. Because I know nothing about that industry, but there might be a relevant model that we never hear about in that industry that could be really useful for us. Unless you go to a conference about that sometime, you'll never know. Unless you follow the right people on LinkedIn, for example. Right. So what I'd like to do, we've had some time practicing. What I'd like to do is just get your perspective on these final questions. Will AI, but based on what you've discovered, will AI become your new personal assistant? You may have been on the fence earlier. Share your perspective now. Grab these little post-it dudes and put them. You've got hell yes on the fence, or now I'm good. Don't think it's going to be helpful for me. Majority on the left. Nice. I'm sharing in the chat, by the way, a list to the Notion database, which has, it just grows all the time. I add new ones as I discover them. But there is a list on that link of copy and paste AI use cases that are in the Agile space that you can use today. Next question. Was this a good use of your time? So this is a return on time invested loop. You've got a clock. If it's pointing upwards, 12, this was the best use of your time. Feel free to add any comments as well inside that. It could be your name. It could be anything you thought about the session. Obviously, this is all about me and continuously improve how I deliver this session. If it was a 3, that was not a great use of your time. If it was a 1, that was an awful use of your time. 6 was okay. 9 was a good use of your time. Just let me know how it was from your perspective. Defo beats a box set on Netflix. There we go. If you're looking to learn anyway. And if you're feeling brave, why not use AI to write a review of this session and copy and paste it below? I think someone's already tried that. I've shared it in the chat. Nice. Isn't ChatGPT so nice to me? If I needed an ego boost, I just need to go and speak to ChatGPT, clearly.
Yeah, I think you need to either they're going to send you an invoice or I don't know, maybe reverse billing or something. Yeah.
No, I definitely do not gain anything from OpenAI for doing this session. Missing a trick, clearly.
It's just interesting that it was such a comprehensive response from a simple, I don't know, one-liner.
There we go. It can help wordsmith a lot of things. Obviously, again, you gotta pick and choose the bits that you feel are relevant. But
Yeah, and I find like you gotta be careful with like if you give it too short of a prompt, some of the stuff might come back as like AI generated, like you do against an AI checker. So sometimes I write something, I'm like, please keep my voice.
yes, that's a really good point as well. You can ask it to maintain a certain tone and style of voice. You might, for example, give it a snippet of your own writing and then ask it to maintain that tone and style of voice in the next bit of thing you're trying to do. So let's say you've given some examples of some emails you've written or some articles you've written or otherwise, and then you can say, right, I'm now writing a post, or I'm trying to think of a post or a response to an email on this topic or a way of addressing this topic. Maintain that flow, that format, that style of that tone of voice, and it will do so as well. Okay, well, I'm glad this has been a useful use of most people's time. Feel free to continue experimenting with OpenAI in particular. Feel free to keep sharing what you discover. I'd love to hear more about it. If you'd like to learn anything more about me and what I do, you can follow me on LinkedIn if you don't already do so. You can follow my YouTube channel. I share lots of content on the Agile topics there. I've released hundreds of retrospective templates, all freely accessible on my website. The Notion link is here as well. And if anyone is also interested, I've just released the first chapter of my book on retrospectives, and I'm happy to share the link to that also if you'd like to take a read.
Let's get some applause.
I think someone just did that. Are there any questions anyone has? I think my favorite prompt, by the way, is this one. Favorite noise, anyway.
Yeah, does anyone have any questions they didn't ask when Chris was speaking about, ChatGPT AI? Oh, thank you.
I'll throw you a question there, Chris. So I'm wondering whether over automating stuff can be dangerous. So I'm thinking story points, when they came out and started getting debunked, there was still the idea that the conversations behind that were really useful. And so I'm wondering whether over automating stuff gets us away from the conversations and relationships that are the sort of underpinning mindset behind agility.
It's a really good question. I am firmly in the camp of automation being something that gives people back their lives. I think most people don't want to spend their lives slaving away and working to make other people more money. So I personally, my aim from work is to give myself more free time and more time to spend doing things I enjoy. So I think where this kind of the power and some of this automation comes in is the less exciting, the administrative stuff. I often say individuals and interactions enabled by processes and tools, rather than the kind of over qualifier that the Agile Manifesto uses. And for me, this is one example of how technology can enable people in their interactions, enable individuals in their interactions, not replace. So to your exact example there about user stories and story points, the idea is not to replace the conversation. The conversation gives great context. It builds shared understanding. It builds alignment and all those great things. We don't want to stop that. I'm not at all recommending using this to the point where you don't have conversations anymore and you become so reliant upon it that you don't have those conversations. To me, it's just an aid to, in the same way a calculator is an aid to the ability to do mathematics and advanced things like that.
Thank you.
And I know you also had that question on the ethical side of this. Was there a particular driver for that question, Mike?
So ethics is a particular concern in AI more generally at the moment, and that's just where it came from. They reckon that the rate of escalation or rate of improvement in things like large language models like ChatGPT is almost exponential at the moment.
Mhm.
But the rate of improvement of the ethics in its use is really not. And there's a lot of talk about the shiny new toy, but there's not as much talk about how we could use it ethically or the problems that we might foresee. And because this was AI as your friend, not a threat, I just wanted to counterbalance that with just be wary. It is a tool, and every tool can be used badly.
Very true. I mean, there are lots of examples throughout history of tools that were intended for one purpose being misused. So obviously, in the wrong hands, they could be used horribly and used for malpractice and all manner of things. I know, to your point, yeah, the growth of this is exponential. Every week, thousands of new AI tools are being released for various use cases. They're training new versions of this all the time with lots more volumes of data. You've got the ethical considerations of whether original content used to create AI versions is breaking copyright and things like that. So, whole industries are under threat right now because of other versions of it or other AI tools like DALL-E and Midjourney using original artists' work to create variations of that, and therefore reducing the demand for their services because you can create in seconds what would have taken someone thousands of hours to create or learn, and there's a huge ethical consideration there. To me, I'm always coming back to will this be more helpful than a hindrance? And I think it's something that's going to give people back their lives to an extent. It's going to help people have more free time. The problem is obviously the ever-growing demand and the greed of capitalism.
Well, ChatGPT is going to do much the same thing, isn't it? Because if you ask it to provide training material, for example, it potentially will go and source from books. And there's quite a few lawsuits coming out now around exactly that topic.
It's going to be fascinating to see how it evolves. I know that certain technology leaders, even presidents, I think Biden was saying recently about the need to create some governance around AI's use because of their fears of how it could be misused and ensuring that the ethical considerations are there. So it'll be fascinating to see how this conversation evolves. I don't necessarily have the answer. I'm just eager to learn and see what happens with it. All right. Thank you. Over to you again, Fred.
Yeah, absolutely. I see some people dropping off. Let's come up to close it out. So, do we use sponsors or something you learned?
Let's just do something you learned.
All right. So how about a poll? Let's bring a poll here. Write out like something you've learned today. As you go through this, let's see. I don't know if we need. Can we close the?
I think there's Mary out.
There we go. There we go. Miro AI, definitely. Miro AI. Town Hall's epic time saver. Much wider variety of use of ChatGPT. Absolutely. Be creative, yeah. Need to make more use of AI. It's powerful. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I generally keep a tab of it up, and I'll just go over there and ask a question, rewrite email, a post, whatever it might be. I'm going to use it to trying to write a workshop coming up for our team around the benefits of mobbing and pair programming and how we can do it in our context, because there's a lot of fear around pair programming because we're like, that's my work, that's my ticket, and so gotta help break them through, especially because I'm not a developer. I'm just a theory guy. Awesome, some great stuff. I love it. Those are great things that we learned today. We'll end that poll. Um, and then we already did return on investment. So let me wrap it up with we couldn't be here without some of the great sponsors, right? Like Butter. I saw some comments in the chat about this platform being so great. There's a 7-day free trial, 30% off your first 3 months with Butter. And Chris has his coaching. He's got a Scrum Mastery Pathway, which I believe some members here are actually there. So, which is awesome. You can get saved 10% off with.
Not AI generated, I'll have you know.
Not AI generated. It's Chris Stone generated, but with code SMP10. That's it. So, I want to thank y'all for spending the morning, the afternoon, or the evening with us talking about AI and with Chris on the Virtually Agile meetup. And look forward.
One more thing I'll add is that we do have a second meetup this week on Thursday, same time, with David Pereira on untrapping product teams. So if you do have more time for further learning again this week, we have another great talker, another great speaker joining us on Thursday, David Pereira.
Awesome. Thank you for the reminder, Chris. And thank you all for being here today.